Good evening, and welcome once again to the official MUFON podcast. I'm your host, Richard Beckwith. Tonight, new document releases from the Pentagon reveal the physical effects of UFOs. Scientists claim that stars may actually be a communication tool, and researchers have developed a new machine learning tool that simulates what a message from extraterrestrial intelligences might look like. We'll also have the latest, strangest cases from the National UFO Reporting Center and MUFON, including completed unknowns from the field investigators who investigated them. And tonight, MUFON's Chief Field Investigator in Florida, David Toon, talks about his extensive research into anomalous solar objects. That's all coming up right now on the official MUFON podcast. Lifelong UFO researcher and award-winning pilot John Lear transitioned into the next life on Tuesday, March 29th. I thought it would be fitting here on the MUFON podcast to hear the news of his death directly from his longtime friend, George Knapp at KLAS in Las Vegas.
Most people think I'm absolutely nuts. And that's okay with me.
John Lear didn't mind when people attacked his wild stories. In fact, he reveled in it. He came to be known as the godfather of conspiracies, but anyone who was given a tour of his jam-packed den knew there was a lot more to Lear than tall tales.
And that's the secret base there.
Those walls were a museum of his life, pictures with the famous and infamous, of planes he had flown, secret places and projects he'd investigated. Regret wasn't a word he was known to use.
Would you do it the same way?
Exactly the same way.
Determined to carve out his own path, Lear dove into aviation, becoming an accomplished pilot at a young age, eventually setting multiple world records in all manner of planes. His daredevil life came at a cost, serious injuries caused by plane crashes he shouldn't have survived. During the Vietnam era, he flew cargo planes for the CIA and continued to court danger by flying in and out of other hotspots. In the mid-'80s, he started hearing stories about a UFO cover-up and, not surprisingly, jumped in with both feet, making various media appearances to discuss his ideas.
The people are abducted, they're taken up into a saucer.
Good evening, this is John Lear.
In March 1989, he accompanied a small group to the outskirts of Area 51. 3 Wednesday nights in a row, they watched a glowing disc rise above the mountains over Papoose Dry Lake.
Did you see that move it did?
No, I didn't.
I kept going.
The person who initiated the desert outing was a scientist who claimed he worked at Papoose on flying saucers. That scientist was interviewed live on television in May 1989 from Lear's driveway, a tale that spread around the world.
9 flying saucers, flying discs.
Later that year, the identity of Lear's friend was made public. Bob Lazar's claims put Area 51 on the map. In his later years, Lear's health declined. He could no longer fly, but continued to share stories about increasingly outrageous conspiracies. The crazy stories don't obscure what was an amazing life. To the end, Lear figured he'd be vindicated.
Believe me when I tell you, you may not find out in a month, a year, 5 years or 10 years, but you'll look back at what I'm telling you now and you'll say to yourself, my gosh, the son of a gun was right.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
Our thanks to George Knapp, and our thanks to John Lear. You will find a link to the KLAS story in the description below. Are aliens using stars to communicate? According to a preprint paper published by Imperial College London quantum physicist Terry Rudolph, an advanced civilization could modify the light coming from stars to communicate across enormous distances. This from bentlights.com. The idea is that aliens may use entangled photons from various stars to send messages that appear to be random blinking to bystanders, and while this is pure speculation, it is technically conceivable in terms of physics. Rudolph writes that they've shown that free space diffraction of photons distributes highly useful entanglement. Quantum entanglement occurs when 2 or more particles link up in a certain way. No matter how far apart they are, observations of one of the entangled particles can automatically reveal information about the other entangled particles, and any action taken on one of these particles will always have an impact on the others in the entangled system. Receivers of the propagating modes, how radio signals move from a sending antenna to a receiving antenna, may perform distributed quantum computations using just linear optics and photon counting. While distributed computing necessitates traditional communication between receivers, much like standard measurement-based computation, this communication is based on entirely random outcomes and hence might be confused with noise. Rudolph's theory is predicated on the idea that a cautious civilization could hide their photonic entanglement dispersion by using the thermal light already being emitted by the different stars they visit. One may hope, therefore, that we could detect the presence of said aliens by looking for that communication. Perhaps, writing in the correlations of that radiation, the universe is actually bathed in alien chatter and other forms of distributed quantum information processing. You will find links to the Bent Lights article and Dr. Rudolph's paper in the description below. Presuming aliens are sending detectable radio signals, researchers have developed a new machine learning tool that simulates what a message from extraterrestrial intelligences might look like. This from phys.org. For more than 60 years, scientists have been searching the cosmos for possible signs of radio transmissions that would indicate the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. In that time, the technology and methods have matured considerably, but the greatest challenges remain. In addition to never having detected a radio signal of extraterrestrial origin, there is a wide range of possible forms that such a broadcast could take. In short, SETI researchers must assume what a signal would look like, but without the benefit of any known examples. Recently, an international team led by the University of California, Berkeley, and the SETI Institute developed a new machine learning tool that simulates what a message from extraterrestrial intelligences might look like. It's known as Cetigen, an open-source library that could be a game-changer for future SETI research. In the 1960s, the idea was to focus on a region around a well-known frequency, where neutral hydrogen emits radiation in interstellar space, 1.42 gigahertz. Since this natural emission is prevalent throughout the galaxy, the idea is that any intelligent civilization would know about it and potentially target this frequency for transmission to maximize the chance of detection. Since then, especially as technology has rapidly advanced, radio SETI has expanded along all axes of measurement. We now take measurements across a bandwidth of multiple gigahertz instantaneously. Another major change has been the incorporation of machine learning-based algorithms designed to find transmissions amid the radio background noise of the cosmos and correct for radio frequency interference, or RFI. The algorithms employed in SETI surveys have fallen into one of two categories, those that measure voltage time series data and those that measure time frequency spectrogram data. For SETI researchers, machine learning is a way of identifying transmissions in raw radio frequency data and classifying multiple types of signals. Cetigen facilitates the production of synthetic radio observations, which can be used in entirely synthetic data or added on top of real observational data to provide more realistic noise and RFA background. When it comes right down to it, astronomers have no idea what an extraterrestrial signal might look like because they've never seen one before. This paradoxically makes it harder to tease out evidence of technosignatures amidst the background noise of the cosmos. However, by establishing parameters based on what is theoretically possible, scientists can narrow the search and increase the odds that they will find something someday. You will find a link to the phys.org article in the description below. The Pentagon has released an additional 1,500 pages of previously unreleased documents from the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program. Among those documents are a series of defense intelligence reference documents on a wide variety of subjects, such as metallic glasses, aerospace applications of programmable matter, biomaterials, materials for advanced aerospace platforms, positron aerospace propulsion, warp drive, dark energy, and the manipulation of extra dimensions. There was also a rather disturbing reference document that detailed anomalous acute and subacute effects on human biological tissues when exposed to UFOs. These include, but are not limited to, immediate erythema, that is, heat and redness caused by being overexposed, fever, pain, headaches, numbness and paralysis, malaise, diarrhea, loss of hair and alopecia, skin eruptions, boils, cardiac palpitations, beginnings of what were to become chronic headaches and symptoms of insomnia and other sleep and dream disturbances, moderate to occasional severe anxiety and insomnia, photophobia or extreme sensitivity to light, dry and scratchy stinging eyes, extremely inflamed bloodshot sclera with soft tissue swelling of the eyelids, signs of radiation illness, and over several years the signs of malignant transformations or, yes, tumors. Here is Lou Elizondo on Fox News talking about revelations contained in the new document release.
These are military eyewitnesses. In some cases, they're fighter pilots or they're security personnel that have come up close and personal with a UAP, or I guess in the vernacular, UFO. And in some cases, they have sustained significant, some sort of medical trauma, something that can be looked at and quantified and qualified and measured as some sort of biological effect. That they didn't suffer these consequences until they came up close and personal to a UFO. And by the way, let me just say, this isn't pseudoscience. You know, for you, you're absolutely right in your intro. For many years, we've been told, oh, you know, this is silly and whatnot, and this topic is really not to be taken seriously. Look, I was part of the program. I ran the program for a better part of 8 years on this topic. It is absolutely real. And now finally, because of the pressure put by Congress and people like you in the media, finally our government is beginning to become more transparent about this topic and tell the truth about this topic in a way that I wasn't at liberty to have the conversation 4 years ago when you and I first started talking with each other. The bottom line is, if I've never seen a microwave oven before, and let's say I didn't know how to use it and I happened to put my hand or unfortunately, let's say my head too close to a microwave oven when it's being turned on, chances are there's going to be some sort of negative biological consequence. Same holds true if I go to let's say an average airport. I just took a 737 today, and if I'm in the cockpit or I'm in the aircraft, there's no real threat. But if I stand behind the engine when the engine is, you know, firing up, chances are I'm going to get burned, I'm going to lose my hearing. There are medical consequences. The question is it deliberate? Is it a product of the technology? Yes. Or is it a product of something else? And we think right now, and again, let me just preface, preliminarily speaking, it's probably just a consequence of the advanced technology. We've been looking at this for a long time, and if anyone seems to suggest that China or Russia back in 1950s had the ability to travel at hypersonic speeds and do 90-degree turns in midair after doing 8,000 miles an hour, then, you know, you're looking at the greatest intelligence failure this country has ever had, eclipsing that of 9/11, by the way, by an order of magnitude. So no, I think it's fair to say at this point, suffice it to say, this is probably not some sort of adversarial technology we're dealing with.
Here is Nick Pope talking about the new revelations and whether or not they lead us to the conclusion that these objects are being piloted by alien beings.
No, we're not quite there yet. But what we have seen over the last 3 or 4 years is this subject coming out of the fringe and into the mainstream. We've seen multiple videos, US Navy videos of jets chasing these things, tracked on radar. We've had some of the pilots and the intelligence people talking about them. And now we learn that this is an ongoing situation, and it's not just UFOs. Frankly, they've been looking at other things which sound like they come straight out of an X-Files script. One theory is that this is next generation aerospace tech, secret prototype aircraft and drones. Some people say it might be US tech, secretly tested on one part of the military by another to see how we react. And of course, there's another theory that this is adversary technology from Russia or China, for example. But, you know, the extraterrestrial hypothesis is out there too. And all of this is why Congress is now taking very close note of this. The Senate Intelligence Committee in particular, but the Armed Services Committees in both the Senate and the House are looking at this. There were multiple UFO provisions in the latest defense bill. So people are taking this seriously. People like Marco Rubio, for example, have spoken out quite strongly on this. But the other thing is we've just got a lot more evidence than was previously the case. We always knew pilots saw these things, but it's the DOD themselves that have recently put some of this on their website. And what we've seen recently is the Defense Intelligence Agency also doing massive document dumps, releasing, you know, literally thousands of pages on this, and there's more to come.
You'll find links to the newly released DIA documents at the Black Vault and the links to Lou Elizondo and Nick Pope's interviews in the description below. On February 28th at 7:05 p.m., a witness from Georgetown, Delaware was driving home from Peterkins Road in Georgetown and saw a bright white orb in the sky over the field that did not appear to be too far above the treetops. The object appeared to move slightly, but mostly hover. The witness was able to get 2 photos of it when it was all white, but then it changed and there were 3 large diamond-shaped patterns, lights in blue, red, and green. The witness stopped and tried to get video, but was unable to do so before the object suddenly disappeared. According to the witness, there was a plane that was flying near the object at one point, and in comparison, the lights on the plane looked like a tiny dot in the sky. It was certainly unusual and did not look like anything the witness had ever seen. On April 1st, 2022, at a rural location near Acme, Pennsylvania, in MUFON case number 121487, the reporting witness was in her room when her husband said, "Hurry, come here, there's something weird outside." That's when she saw the bright lights. After about 20 seconds, the lights completely shut off and it was pitch black outside again. Then the lights turned back on and her husband started recording the objects from his Android Note 10 Plus fully zoomed in. That's apparently what we're looking at here in the video. It lasted a bit longer this time, and then it turned into one small light quickly, and then to blackness again. The whole sky near the object lit up and glowed an orange-peach color around it, almost like the sun setting, but only in that area and once the lights went out. It was pitch black again outside after about a minute or two. On March 9th, 2022, in MUFON case number 121162, the witness was taking photos of a property for general surveying of conditions. After downloading the series of photos, the witness noticed one had an unusual object and a ring next to the object. He submitted the photo for review and analysis. Our Chief Field Investigator in Florida, David Toon, investigated that case for us. David, what can you tell us about case number 121162?
Richard, it's been an interesting case, even though it's fresh on the books right now because of the complexity and simplicity of the image that came in. We had a witness here in Florida who was an engineer background and was doing a land survey and just wanted to go out in the piece of land or parcel and take some photos of it. I'm not sure if it was to buy, purchase, or just what he was doing, but he was surveying the lot. Maybe it was an acre or two. And as he took a 360-degree series of single images, he went back home and started processing them for his files and noticed one of the images had this odd-looking gray, round, spherical object that was also captured just above the ground. But more interesting was a gray smoke ring about the same size as the object in close proximity. And that's the best way to describe it. Normally, if you see a kind of a fuzzy ball and you're in the middle of Florida taking pictures, you're going to call it a bug. That's about 99.9% of what we get around here. Lots of flying insects. They're all trying to photobomb everybody's images. However, when I started zooming in, I use Adobe Photoshop initially to crop and take a look at this particular object that the witness was speaking about. I noticed the ring was a little more prominent as I zoomed in, cropped it, and tried to enhance the some of the color and brightness, contrast, that kind of thing, and realized that the little ring next to it was significant. It wasn't something that was separate because it was almost the same color as the object itself. So rather than poo-pooing it off saying, well, it's another insect, I had to take both as a single anomaly, that they were somehow related through proximity. And I have this AI image enlarger program that I use. So I increased the resolution by 4 times, and it doesn't degrade the image. In fact, it keeps the image resolution as you blow up the image. And a little more features were defined. I was able to see the nuances within the object itself. Now the smoke ring next to it, it didn't give me any more data to work with or from, but when I highlighted both after enlarging and cropping the image, I could see some real fine features underneath the spherical part of the object. And I just was in awe that this object, whatever it was, had some sort of ring associated with it. And when I started plotting the ring and the object in relationship in the sky, I realized that if it was a bug, the bug was moving pretty close towards the ground. But if it was miles away, it's real possible this object was going to stay within the atmosphere as it's traveling. Now, the witness and his buddy both don't remember seeing anything, hearing anything. They literally went home and post-production looked at their photos. And which, you're not going to hear a bug either. But if this is something that was miles away and caused some sort of ring anomaly as it's traveling, then we have something completely different than just a bug. We may have something that's a real object cutting through our atmosphere, and to create a perfect shape of itself, but inverted in the ring, it literally looks like it popped out of the sky and left a hole the size of itself as it's coming through.
Thank you, David, for your excellent work on case number 121162. David, you've also been doing some very interesting research into anomalous solar objects. What can you tell us about that?
Well, each solar satellite has a package of sensors on it that view the sun in different frequencies. This one happens to be off the Solar Dynamic Observatory, the SDO satellite, and I pulled this image out of the archives off the internet from NASA for this particular satellite. And this is the 304 angstrom. It takes a look at the ionized hydrogen and helium, and that's why they produce it in orange, so you know what frequency you're looking at. The smaller image you see is the object in question. Obviously, every one of my pictures on this website has the sun in it somewhere, but a lot of them are zoomed in only on the objects that are near it. So this is a nice picture where you get a sense that you can see the sun's surface, but off to the side you get this one thing looking like an asteroid or a comet flying by. The problem is there's not a second image of this, whereas an asteroid or comet, there'd be hundreds of images of it progressing as each image progressed in time. These images are capturing things that are going so fast that you only get one frame of them in it before they're gone again.
So how many images do you have right now on the website of these anomalous objects near the sun?
I have a little more than 1,200 right now that we've uploaded. You can go through them one at a time. It'll play automatically for you. You can even select with the different filter systems off the main page which satellite system you want to look at. I use 3 different satellites to feed into this file system that you're looking at. So you can pick the types of objects. You can pick the type of solar satellite, or you can do what you're doing here, just start looking at all 1,200 of them in a row. Okay. This object here is not an asteroid and it's not a comet. You can tell by the shape of it, it's got different intensities of light. And for this particular sensor, since you're looking at a 171 sensor here, this is ionized iron that this sensor is looking at. And for some reason, this particular object has a bright spot in the middle of it. And that's indication that there's more energy at that particular spot. So it's very anomalous. It shouldn't be there, and it's only in one frame. So, a few seconds later, when the satellite takes another picture, this object's not there anymore. And if you go to the next one, you'll see that every one is just unique, except that with about 60,000 images I've captured in the last 6 years, I'm starting to get categories of stuff where I can put them together and go, oh, I see that object again. Here it is one more time.
What is this?
Different date.
What is this right here?
This is off of a 1600 angstrom magnetic sensor, and this is somewhere off to the side. You don't see the sun or the surface because this is zoomed in pretty tight. But what this is something structural that shouldn't be so structural. Normally you have a round dot of light if it's a comet or an asteroid. This doesn't give that perception at all. It's too structural, and it's there and it's gone. You can go to the next one where you see patterns by the sun's surface there. Again, it's there and it's gone. And I don't know what to make of all the dots. I have theories after looking at this for so many years. I theorize that all those dots are probably energy points on the surface of a vehicle or a craft. And you're not seeing the craft itself, you're just seeing energy points on the surface as a possibility or a theory that I'm working with. So I think all those dots and lines are related to each other, because the next photo, seconds later, it's not there.
And so this is the next thing, or you mean the next photo in the series that was taken?
Exactly. These are just random pics of random objects I've been finding. So this is off the same satellite system, SDO, but this is the 202 angstrom. Again, it's a different type of ionized iron that the sensor's looking at. And the shape here shows you a trail. Now, if you're into astrophysicist type stuff and imagery, you'll realize that, well, some things cause a trail because the CCD has a artifact that can be created called a charge transfer effect, where it smears. It takes a light source and then it smears this line. Except that there's a break in this. There's an object, then there's a break, and then there's a tail. To me, it's an indicator that this is actually a trail from the object itself cutting through the plasma of the sun. So we get to capture a little bit of the energy interaction of this object as it goes through the chromosphere or photosphere of the sun. And again, it's one image, the next one's clean. It'll be blank.
Well, are we getting an idea about the size of these objects?
Unfortunately, I don't have many of those, but they're in here. They're in this series. And the reason why I say that is you actually have to have an object interact with the surface of the sun to be able to say it's 93 million miles away. And I do have some images like that that shows that there's an interaction going on with the sun's surface and the object. That's how big these things are. It's like the size of a planet. And it's startling, to say the least. If you want to see some of those, I can show you some of those, but you got to understand this object to the right you're seeing right now is about 4 or 5 times the size of Earth.
And
they're massive.
And this is the object right off to the side. This it sort of looks like it's being illuminated by the nearby sun. Is that
correct? And most folks who are familiar with solar physics, they say, well, this is a CME, a coronal mass ejection. It's not. There's no trail. There's no connective tissue to this thing. When a CME goes off, there's many frames showing how it builds up or how it disperses its energy. That's not what's happening here. These things aren't coming from a CME. They're just near the sun. And thank goodness it's a great light bulb to use for photo flash, because it lights up everything it gets near it. In this case, this object was there and gone. If you pull back out and hit the red box and you put in your filters on this particular website, you'll go to the top left where it says filters and click on that part of it and put in a selection of categories. Go at the very top. Let's go to massive. Just do a drop down, look for massive, and you'll see some objects that are actually interacting with the sun's surface. So if you go through here and click forward, you'll see some of the images of something the size of a planet actually interacting with the sun's surface. You'll see the plasma connection. I don't know what I'm seeing because some of the bleed over. You can see those lines, those horizontal lines. It's kind of hiding what the object is, but the object is so bright the sensor can't handle it, and so they bleed into the other channels, and you get these kind of strange white looking flying saucer stuff. It's not. That's called an artifact, but the object itself is what is in question. And people say, well, this is a CME. Well, CMEs blow off the sun and continue moving someplace. These actually were caught, and some of them stay there for a day. So they're actual objects. And that was my first paradigm shift was, oh my gosh, we've got something the size of Jupiter hanging out for a day, this same distance from the sun's surface, and it's not going or coming into the sun. It's just pulling plasma from it.
So are you getting these images that are persistent over a series of days?
Yes, that's why I chose this particular category, because this does show you a several days worth of imagery, and sometimes the same sensor will give you a 24-hour look, and it's almost like a ball of light just hovering over the sun's surface. And some of them are days and years apart. Some are, every 15 minutes you get like this one here. It just stayed there for a while. So I took several photos from the NASA archives and then zoomed in on it a little bit so you can see there really was something here that wasn't a CME coming off of the surface.
So, David, can you tell us once again what your website is and how people can get a look at those images?
Sure. It's called solarsuspicions.com. No break, just a straight solarsuspicions.com. And the images are available for free. Anybody wants to go through and just take a look at them. There is a fee if you want to get a little bit deeper into it and pull stuff down for your own personal archives. And it's like $19.95 a year. What that does is it keeps me going with my research, because I'm going to start replacing and updating some of these photos so that we get even more content. So it's going to be a living research website for folks who want to learn this science.
Thank you to David Toon for his excellent field work and, of course, for his extracurricular research into anomalous solar objects. And our special thanks to all of our other dedicated MUFON field investigators. Without them, MUFON would truly be nothing. I'll be back in a moment with some afterthoughts. Just a few short years ago, UFOs were a figment of our collective imaginations. A cultural myth of the modern age meant to replace angels and demons. They had been described by some as a modern myth within a myth wrapped within a conspiracy. Now we see by the most recent release from the Defense Intelligence Agency that not only are UFOs real, but they can injure you if you get too close. You might suffer illnesses that normally come with exposure to radiation. You might even experience an anomalous pregnancy. How did we get here? More importantly, why are we here? Why are we at this place right now at this time in history? Is this apparent disclosure part of a now voluntary effort to inform the public of the presence of these visitors, or is the hand here being forced? I have said this before, and I will say it again and again. It is they, that is the visitors, who control the knowledge of their presence. If they wanted everyone to know they were here, they would simply land anywhere they wanted from Washington to the Kremlin to Beijing, and there wouldn't be a damn thing anyone could do about it. So again I ask, rhetorically of course, why are we here? Thank you for joining us. And for those of you watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time, right here on the official MUFON Podcast.